This is part 4 of my story. I am picking up where I received the termination in Belfast. Once I composed myself after a short time in the afternoon and it really sunk in what was happening, I started sending emails to Mike and Kathy requesting initially to meet with them, to discuss this, to sit down. I wanted clarification as far as what I had done wrong that they felt wasn't appropriate or wasn't acceptable, or they actually described as impacting the morale of the group of residents. They also said in the email that I had received over a dozen complaints, which I personally hadn't received any complaints. I was not aware of any of that, so I was very confused. I wanted to sit down with them. I wanted clarification, and of course, I wanted to work this out. I wanted to find out what could be done. If there was something they didn't like the questions I was asking, or something they didn't like, or they thought was so horrible to terminate me, I would love to know what that is and what they're referring to. I couldn't recall anything myself that would warrant that kind of behavior from them, or that kind of warrant a termination. So I started with the emails requesting a meeting. I was very close to the ship. I knew they were on the ship at that time. I requested a meeting to sit down and talk about this. Didn't get a response. I sent a series of emails that day, 3 or 4, that very day that I received the termination, and stayed for 2 more weeks in Belfast in an attempt to try to renegotiate something, to try to work this out and come to an agreement. They gave me hope for a short period of time that something could be done, but you will see from the series of emails what I went through for the next 2 weeks. I am posting the emails that I sent to the company. I am not posting any responses from the company because that would be company information. Private email, which I am not at liberty to post. But I can post the emails that I sent to the company in an attempt to work something out. And obviously they did not respond favorably. Nothing was worked out, which is why I ended up leaving after a 2-week period of time. I'm going to post each one of these emails, there are several of them, for about 10 seconds each. So if you're interested in reading the emails that I had sent to the company, get ready to pause the emails and possibly enlarge them to read them. And if you're not interested in reading them, then wait till you see my face again. I need to add in another very important part to this termination. As soon as the termination letter was received and word got out, many of the residents got together and constructed a very heartfelt letter of support for Bonnie and I to send to management in an attempt to show their support and to have the company reconsider their termination letter to Bonnie and I. So I'm posting that support letter, which was signed by many, many people, and many more besides that were afraid to put their name on that letter because they didn't want a target on their back. They sent personal emails to the management in support of Bonnie and I and asking them to please reconsider their decision. Dear Mike and Kathy, as residents of Villa Vie, we are writing to you to respectfully ask that you reconsider the contract terminations of Bonnie Kelcher and Jenny Phenix. As a community, we take to heart what Kathy said in her latest blog about allowing for criticism and harsh comments and the right to speak what is on one's mind. No resident wants to enter this new venture and milestone time in their lives feeling as though we must watch everything we say for fear of possible recrimination. Some people are generally more positive, while others can be more critical, especially in reacting to stress and uncertainty. These last months have been uncertain, and some have been quick to point out the challenges and shortcomings of VVR. That does not mean that those who tend to be more critical cannot be valued members of our community and do not have a right to voice their opinions. We are and or will be a community, and a community should welcome discussion and differing views. As residents, we are not only concerned about the right to speak our mind, but also the lack of due process that occurred in the terminations. Bonnie and Jenny shared the letters they received. It appears that the decision to terminate their contracts was not based on alleged violation of their contracts or any existing code of conduct, but rather on approximately 12 complaints allegedly received from other residents. While it may come to pass that someone commits a serious infraction and their contract needs to be terminated, VVR should have a fair and established written process for doing so. Any individual so accused should be given a chance not only to respond, but also present the case. Perhaps there should be fair consideration by an appointed panel composed of management and residents. This is not a community by the residents for the residents. While VVR refers to itself as the first residential cruise, we are all aware that the world has existed for more than 2 decades. This ship has a very detailed contract and resident agreement that outlines a fair process for adjudicating any alleged infractions. That includes a formal investigation, an opportunity to respond, board review, and a formal 30-day notice to cure any infractions. We are certain that as a new venture, there's much to come from Villa Vie, and a more formal process will evolve hopefully sooner rather than later. In the interim, however, we respectfully request that you reconsider your position and reinstate Bonnie and Jenny's contracts. Bonnie and Jenny have sold and or rented their homes, spent 2 months waiting in Europe, and put their lives on hold for the opportunity to join us in this adventure. To dismiss them based on the complaints of a minority of residents without a formal process is simply unfair, unjust, and potentially illegal. Please know that while you may have received complaints from some members of the community, everyone signing this letter, in addition to numerous others who agreed but were reluctant to sign because of possible repercussions, wants to live in an environment where we can speak our minds and expect to be treated fairly. We may not all agree with everything Bonnie or Jenny has expressed or the manner in which they expressed it, but we stand behind their right to freely express their opinions and believe they will be valued members of our community. Finally, we recognize that the residents are not the only ones that have been stressed these last few months. We all understand and appreciate the stress that VVR management is experiencing. We hope the decision to cancel the contracts was a manifestation of that stress, and that during reconsideration, the conclusion is that Bonnie and Jenny deserve to continue the adventure they planned. And then this was signed by numerous residents. part of the termination letter was them stating that I had canceled segment 1 and 2. Segment 1 I never canceled, didn't need to because it never existed. The delays ate up most of segment 1 minus possibly a few days. So that never existed, so I didn't cancel segment 1. Segment 2 I actually did cancel, and I started inquiring about canceling that segment when they changed the itinerary. I was in the Canary Islands at that point. They changed the itinerary 100%. I'm going to post what the original itinerary was, where we were supposed to, segment 2 was going to Iceland, Greenland, northern Canada, several stops along the east coast of the US, and ending in Miami, end of September, which is where I was going to pick up all of my things for the rest of the 3.5 years. So when they changed that 100%, we weren't going to any of those places anymore, and we weren't going to Miami. That created a huge problem for me, because that's where I was going to pick up my things. And I was super disappointed that I only signed up for segment 2 because of Iceland, Greenland, northern Canada, and several of the US ports. I hadn't traveled much, so even some of the big US ports, I was really excited about those because I hadn't been there before, and I'd be with a group of people I could go do things with and feel safe in the big city with a group of friends. So I was excited about segment 2 itinerary, which is the only reason that I signed up for it. I added that on after the fact because I was going to start at segment 3 in Miami, but I really wanted that itinerary. When they changed it 100%, none of those ports were any longer on whatever the new updated itinerary was going to be, going somewhere in Europe at that time. It changed numerous times. I did have to look into a way specifically to get myself back to Miami. Like I said, that threw a monkey wrench in the works for sure for me to retrieve my things. And so I sent an email to the company. My first choice was almost always, I wouldn't just blurt out and complain about things. I would make every attempt to send a private email to someone and try to work things out. So I did. I sent an email to Kathy to let them know what my problem was with them no longer going to Miami, and were they willing to fly me to Miami to get my things and then fly me to, at that point, maybe they were going to go to Freeport or Nassau or something, to fly me there then with all of my belongings, which now I couldn't just carry onto the ship, would have to be flown. I sent an email with several options to see if they were willing to help me at all with the situation that they created. And I will post that email right here. Okay, so I had a plan. After 2 weeks in Belfast trying to negotiate, it was time for me to leave. And I had about 3 weeks before I was going to be getting on the Royal Caribbean World Cruise in Amsterdam. Now, if most of you who are familiar with this story, I wasn't the only one terminated. Bonnie Kelter was the second woman who was terminated at the same time as me, pretty much identical. I think we got the exact same termination letter, or very, very close, in the exact same way. So she also, like me, had been trying to negotiate to get back on the ship. We both decided that realized it wasn't going to happen, so we needed to make a plan. I already had a plan. I had already canceled segment 2, what was even going to exist of it, the new segment 2, and booked the Royal Caribbean World Cruise. So she had no plans at all. She was really left high and dry and had no plans, but also in the same situation as me, needed to get back to the US. So luckily, I have a friend who's a travel agent who managed to get her a cabin also on the Royal Caribbean World Cruise. So she had the same plan, and it was kind of nice to have a friend. We both kind of had a shoulder to cry on, so to speak, and a support system at that point to ourselves having to figure out how to get back to the US, because Villa Vie offered no help whatsoever. They just left us there. They sent us a termination letter. That was it. End of discussion, end of meeting, left us there. So we had to fend for ourselves and get ourselves back. We had the cruise. So Bonnie and I, after 2 weeks, left Belfast with a couple of suitcases. We both had left. She had a lot of stuff she left on the ship because she had already been admitted to her cabin at a point, put all of her stuff in her cabin. So she had a lot of stuff in her actual cabin on the ship. I had never even seen my cabin or my temporary cabin on the ship. So I took couple small suitcases in tow, left a couple of my big ones on the ship because there was no way. What we were going to have to do was bounce from Airbnb to Airbnb through Europe, leaving Belfast, going through the UK, going through a few other countries to get to Amsterdam. And we had about 3 weeks, so we had a lot of time to kill. So we planned a little route. We did that. We went together, shared a hotel room to save on expenses, and tried to make the best of it. It was difficult. You know, we're both on a budget. We're both still trying to work something out with the ship. Bonnie was still hoping to get back on the ship. She actually purchased a cabin, so she was in a different situation than I was. I did not purchase a cabin. So she and I spent 3 weeks bouncing through Europe to different Airbnbs in many different cities. We made it to Amsterdam. It was a whole planes, trains, and automobiles thing. Made it to Amsterdam, got on the Royal Caribbean World Cruise, and that was amazing. Okay, so we finally make it to Amsterdam. We get on the Royal Caribbean, the last leg of their world cruise, and it was amazing. I walked into my cabin, this big, beautiful cabin, and, you know, I book a cheap inside cabin. The cabin was beautiful. The ship was beautiful. It was getting close to Christmas, so it was all decorated for Christmas. We had heard about a lot of drama and on social media and stuff, so I was kind of expecting it to be maybe it's the end of the cruise. Maybe people are a little burned out. They're ready to get off. It's been too long. They want to get home. It was nothing like that. These people were so happy. They had had the best experience for the 9 months they'd been on the ship. We heard about all of the places they've been, the memories they created. You know, it was everything I wish I could have had, everything I was hoping to have, that I thought I had signed up for. But to hear these people that actually got to do it for the 9 months, there was no drama. I don't know where all that was, but the people we met were absolutely lovely, more than accommodating to us, just welcomed us with open arms. And it turned out to be great because this was the finale. There was 2 weeks left of their 9-month world cruise. So the cruise company had planned all of these celebrations, which we luckily got to be part of and got to celebrate with them. You know, free days on their islands, and then they had parties, they had dinner. It was amazing. So that was incredible. And the food, oh my gosh, the food. I've been on several cruises. I had never been on a Royal Caribbean cruise. The food was unbelievable. I've never seen so much food as a buffet. I probably gained 10 pounds because the food was so good. And for people who think I complain a lot, I only complain if there's a reason to complain. And I will still temper those complaints. So on this Royal Caribbean cruise, not only was there not one thing to complain about, but it was the best cruise I've ever taken. Everything was beyond perfect. The food, the buffet, the places where we stopped, the people, everything, the way they took care of these people. And we heard the stories about how, you know, they got all their visas for them. The people behind the scenes on this Royal Caribbean World Cruise had to do a lot of work, and they didn't miss a beat. These people couldn't praise them enough. So having a professional cruise company like that handle your every need, I will absolutely, I would love to be on the next Royal Caribbean World Cruise. That is now one of my life goals. The way that you treated everyone, including myself, was just beyond 100%. And I have nothing but good things to say. So this Royal Caribbean cruise ended in Miami. Got to Miami, got on the train, went to my daughter's, and now I had to start my entire life all over again. Didn't know what I was going to do. Had to get a place to live, had to figure out a plan. So that is where I'm going to start part number 5.